Welcome to the old man's corner. Pull up a chair and a cup of coffee and come on in. Welcome. Thanks for dropping in. Today I want to speak a little bit about some standout hometown characters that are in most of our lives. I think most of us in our lives, if we grew up in small towns, had one or two or three of these people that were just regular people that stood out amongst all the rest of us. In my small town, we had a guy who we called Herc, and he used to work for the fair and stuff when it came in town, and he worked for a circus, I think, what we were told. And he was a pretty heavy-set white guy, and he was always walking the streets, and he lived over there off of 4th Street in a little white bungalow house. He was kind of grumpy at times. To us kids, he's kind of grumpy. And of course, a lot of times kids, you know how they are, they tease people. But Herc used to walk around, especially on Main Street, and they had these roll-out canopies in front of the stores. And that was what he did. He kind of went up each morning and rolled out the canopies to keep the sun out of the storefronts. And then in the evening, he'd go back up there and he'd roll them all back up for them. He would also walk around and pick up pop cans and things like that too. But he always stayed busy. Well, we didn't know, people, like I said, they teased him because he was so big and that was all he did. We thought, well, there's not much of a life, but it was a life to him. And later on in years, I found out, and I think the rest of us found out, that he was kind of a sad man, I guess. Through his life, he had raised a bunch of horses, and he had them down at the fairgrounds, and he would go down there and take care of them. Well, we didn't know all that stuff. And it's somewhere in the past that the fairgrounds flooded, and he couldn't get his horses out, and they all drowned. So that was kind of his background. And then I think after we learned that, we were a little more cordial to him and stuff like that. And then find out he really wasn't that bad a guy. He was just kind of gruff. He was old and gruff, and he was an old carny type person, and that's who he was. Another person that was there was an older Hispanic, heavy-set Hispanic man. He lived in our neighborhood. He lived over in an old house that was surrounded by a little bit of wooded area, and he still had the old outhouse that he used, and people would kind of pick on him too because he would ride his bike around. I can't even remember his name. That's sad, but he was very superstitious and very spiritual and oriented, and he did the same thing as far as he would go around and pick up bottles and things like that. And I don't know, he may have had odd jobs and stuff he did as well. But his house looked kind of spooky because it was an old wood house, and it set back it was in a dark and little foresty type area with the old outhouse set towards back. And everybody kind of teased him too, which again, we probably shouldn't have, but especially at Halloween time. A lot of people, I know, one time they went there and turned his outhouse over, which wasn't really right, but they thought that was funny, so they picked on him. And there were times that you could hear him in there, he was praying and stuff. So some of the neighborhood kids, they'd go over, they attached a fishing line to his screen on his house, and they put some rosin on it, and they pull it, and it sounded like somebody was pulling nails out of the house. And you can hear him in there praying for the evil to go away. Later on, I really realized that wasn't too smart. He was a real nice guy. He was just down on his luck like everybody else, but he was surviving. He was doing what he needed to do to survive. So I think we as kids sometimes were not very kind to people that actually were just living their lives and doing the best they could. One of the other people that I remember very well, his name was Raleigh. He used to push a hot dog cart up and down Main Street. Most of the time you'd see him, he'd be outside the theater up there, and the barber shops, and he'd be down. He's all dressed in white with a little white cap on and stuff like that, and he'd be pushing his hot dog cart selling hot dogs, and they were some of the best hot dogs you ever had too. But he had other things on there as well. He was a really friendly guy. He made you laugh because he'd tell stories to you and stuff like that, and people really liked him. And he come from a family there in town that was pretty well known. They were all pretty active themselves, but that's the way he chose to do it. And I think later on he set up a shoe shine stand, and he did that on the side as well. But these are some of the people I remember growing up as a child, that were standouts in our community because they were very prominent people as far as the things they did. They weren't prominent in their wealth or anything like that, but they were prominent because they did a necessary thing that other people didn't always want to do. So remember those people. And I just want to share a little bit of that with you today. And if you had somebody in your neighborhood, if you grew up in a small town, or even if you grew up in a large town, and you had some of these individuals, to share their stories, tell us about them, and what made them special, and why, and what made you remember these people, what kept them stuck in your head and your mind. This is just kind of a short one I wanted to share with you today, and I thank you all for watching my videos. So have a great day. I love you, and I'll talk to you later.